What is up, Experience Point viewers? It is Chris Evans, and I'm back with another overview. And in this guy, I kind of wanted to show how I approach my ZBrush sculpts when I make my materials. So let's get to it. So you guys might be aware, but there is a template for creating planes, and it tiles across, and you get to use the wrap mode. And so here I have the plane, and it's unsubdivided right now, so that's low subdivision. It's just a plane. And so I'll hit D to show what I have sculpted. So this is my sculpt, and then if I hide or show the frame again, this is basically what's going to be rendered out if I hit F, right? So this is what my rendered texture is going to be. And all I did was I didn't take like an object and move them around. I just straight up went in with my pen, turned everything to wrap mode. So I always hit the wrap mode, turn it to 1. And you can see if I brush stroke across, it's going to tile over. And so everything was hand sculpted in this. You can probably tell just through the top arches that they might be off, but I love just going in and freestyling, which makes sculpting so much fun. And so I sculpted this, and I extracted its height data. And what you get is that now we're going to go over to Mixer. I load in the sculpt. So this is what we get out of ZBrush. And what I do is I bring it into Photoshop, make sure it's an open EXR so I get no weird faceting or anti-aliasing in the height map. So now that we have this, we're going to go in and start utilizing Quixel Mixer's procedural stuff. So we're going to go in, I'm going to toggle the bricks layers on, and this is how I'm getting my bricks. And it's simple. It's just a brick pattern. I'm going to hit 0 for you. Brick pattern, and the jitter has the brightness and the gradient jitters both applied. And you can adjust the amount, you can increase the gradient range, you can increase the jitter, which is awesome. Kept them pretty high because I did want the threshold. And I bevel it because the spacing on it is very low. So if I turn off this bevel, it's going to be, let me actually just toggle all this stuff off for you guys. So this is what our bricks look like just by itself. It's very thin. I want very thin lines. I actually do believe I have the bevel here as well. The bevel curve is up, and the bevel is at a very small decimal value. But I wanted a little bit more, so I bevel it just a tiny bit. Oh, actually, this is not even being utilized. We're going to delete that. And then now I want to start distorting the edges. So I make this noise, and I set it to distort. And I start playing with the frequencies and octaves and stuff like that. But then I didn't like how I was just getting this. I wanted it to be more dense on the edges. So I utilized a transform to squish the noise. And what that's doing is giving me better horizontal distortion. So if I toggle it on, you can see what it's doing. And I really liked that. But I didn't like it applied everywhere. So I create this noise. Actually, what I do is actually distort this noise even further. And so now we're getting, because this was actually very repetitive, you can see that this is coming over here. So this noise is distorting the transform itself. So this is affecting this only. And now I'm getting some really cool chipping and stuff inside of my bricks. And then now I utilize another distort, and then if I toggle it on and off, it's very subtle, the distortion, because I like to play with big shapes to small shapes. And then once again, so this one's finer. The frequency is cranked up. And again, I use the transform to squish that noise. So if I toggle this on and off, just getting different details. It's very thin, which is exactly what I wanted into this. And then I didn't want the bricks to come into this pattern here, right? I wanted to be a sculpt, not a brick formation. So what I used was a square, and I adjusted the spacing. So this has 0, this has 17.14. And I mean, that's arbitrary. It's not something I sought out to do. I just know that I needed to move it. And then I use a transform to position into the spot to mask out those bricks. Cool. So now that I got the bricks looking how I want, obviously you can always go back, which is awesome. You can always go here, start adjusting thresholds and stuff like that, change the amounts, and it's pretty fast, it's rapid, it's a ton of fun. Really cool. So let's undo that, and let's say this is what we want. So now I'm going to create brick detail. And so I toggle this on, and it's very subtle, but you can see it here. We can obviously increase this if we wanted to. If I adjust the threshold, it can come up. And I alt-clicked this layer in particular because I only wanted it to be a part of the bricks. So it's not affecting this top part of the material. It's only affecting what's in the bricks. So if I alt-click this, oh, oops, that's not what I wanted. Alt-click this. It's actually doing a lot more, but yeah. So it's only going to be affecting what's inside of this mask, right? Which is super handy. And that's pretty much what I do. I just started adding some noises, bunch of noise. This one's a normal. This one's set to distort. I'm always distorting the noises because I don't want things to be the same. Then I crunch this guy up, and he is multiplying over. And a multiply I actually use for more of a subtraction. I feel that it works better. But now that we have that, I go to another surfacing where it just gets a bunch of details. And this guy, similar noise. This guy distorting it. This guy also distorting that noise. And then I go in and then I bring the mask I had originally created, the base pattern of the bricks. You can just hit right click, copy component, go here, and then paste the component. And the reason I did this is because I wanted to not have it in every single spot. So if I was to set this back, or if I was to toggle this off, it's everywhere. And because you get all this awesome information, right? You get all the gradients, you get the brightness amounts and stuff like that. It's really going to help give you soft transition periods and just not have it be all across the board, which I really like. And then I also there was an offset, so I had to use the transform to offset to match the bricks. You can see there's a line here. Use that transform, it fixes that. So now we get into the fun stuff, the texturing. So I use one of their scans. It's a base concrete. I adjust the albedo to get the color I want. And that is it for this. And what I do is I duplicate this material and I adjust its values. And this is giving me just fine granular noise, just giving me some color distortion, which I really like. I'm using a noise, and then I use a gradient remap to get it to be very fine. So if I was to hit repeat, it gets even more granular. If I lower it, it gets bigger. So I really like that, and I lowered its opacity because I felt it was too intense all the way. You can kind of see the mipping, so I lowered that opacity. And I'm always wrapping to base because I don't want these materials to affect my sculpt information. And so now I add this white gradient, and I'm also, again, duplicating this first material, applying it. And this guy was using a position gradient. I use its curvature, and I set it to a subtract. I increase the contrast of it. And so now it's just crunching these guys down to this particular area, but I didn't like it was a flat line. So I use this noise to subtract it. So if I hit 9, we're going to see how it's being applied, right? So I had this, and the curvature is, basically subtracting away, crunching it, and then adding this noise to give me more of a natural pattern across the material. And then now that I have this cool gradient coming up, again, duplicating that material. And then this guy's giving me some dark, smaller spots across the board. This guy is also using a normal. So it's lowered a bit. I adjusted the range. If you were to bring this up, it's just going to affect more of the top parts. I wanted it to kind of be all across the board, but not everywhere. And you can adjust the range, right? It's kind of like a levels adjustment. Using a noise to multiply across it. So basically subtracting away from that normal. And that's all I did for this. And that's how I'm creating these dark spots. So we're going to go ahead, create another material. And this guy is giving me some streaks and larger darkening in on the surface. And he's pretty simple, just some noises. Transforming him, I'm getting these crazy horizontal lines. But of course, you don't want it to just be straight across the board. So I use this noise to distort that. So now it's distorting these, and then I go in, add another noise, and I set it to a subtract. So if I do that, you can see how it's doing it. So now it's super granular, and this is helping remove some of those spots. And then I use a gradient remap to help just increase some of those, to bring the ranges up because I wanted more of it. So now we have that. I have this light spots, which are very subtle. It's not, and it's just using simple noise, and then again the curvature to subtract some of the areas. So this is what we get. And then the color offset obviously is not too strong, but I just wanted something subtle. So if you shift the color, you can see what's going on. So now in the material, I did have reference for this, so it had some really cool some reds and blues in it. So duplicating the material, adjusting the roughness and color, you can start seeing that I have some stronger reds coming through. And I just start out with a noise. I always start with some noise or curvature. And the curvature is very soft, and that's because I increased the sample range. And then I adjusted its levels, took this noise, and it's only affecting the curvature, and I set it to a multiply. So this is what we're getting now. And I increased the contrast, or the brightness of it, to bring it up. Use another curvature, but this time this curvature is more white. So now we're only getting the pockets, and he's setting to a subtract. So I'm removing these areas of the material. So if I unclick that, it starts coming up. I'll hit 2. See, yeah, there we go. So utilizing this, just getting rid of some areas, and then again remap to just kind of increase the threshold of the noise. Right. So I'm getting some cool details there. And so now there were some blues that were in the material, which is really cool. And I decided to put them in the crevices and also in some other spots. And this guy also utilizing a bunch of noises and curvatures. So this is what I got. You can see that it's very crisp and contrasty because I increased the amplitude really high. So I bring this down. You start getting some mid-range grays, but I really wanted it really strong. So I increased that amplitude. I used this curvature, and then I crunched it really hard, and I inverted it because I wanted it inside the crevices instead of it being on the edges and stuff like that. And I'm setting it to a multiply to remove some of the areas here. And this guy is also doing a multiply, so I'm also removing from this curvature. Right? So we're getting pockets, we're getting great noise. And this guy set this frequency is up, so if I was to do that, you can start seeing it becomes larger, which we don't. I want a real fine noise, which is really cool. Adjusting its brightness and contrast, another curvature, and this curvature is set to a subtract. It's very similar to what we did before, just adjusting the frequency balance and also increasing the range, just because it does get softer. So I was to bring this down, you can start seeing it gets very fine, and I wanted it to be a lot softer. And then again, gradient remap to just really give me some more information. So now that we have that, I do another red pass, and it's darker and it's crunchy, and I'm also really trying to push the fidelity of that. So it's the similar process. I basically duplicated this. So I'll go ahead and show you. So I duplicate this. I go in. I adjust its color. And then all I do is go in and start playing with the seeds. And you can start seeing that it starts shifting, which is great. So I don't have to go ahead and recreate the stack. I can just go in, adjust what was done before, and then just really utilize the previous layer. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back up. And then now I'm going to go ahead and utilize some of Mixer or Megascan's leaks, which is awesome. So this guy, I'm putting him right above the ornate pattern here doing some mild offsetting just to put it in place. And then I'm doing another leak here on the top part and doing the same thing, put him into place, duplicate him, and I put on the left side. Okay, cool. Now I feel like it was missing some fine granularity, so I go ahead and do this. It's very subtle, but if you went in, it's really pushing the details, right? So this noise, it's not anything crazy. It's just a noise and then this gradient remap. And if I was to bring it up, you can really get really fine details. But I didn't want that small. I wanted it pretty big, but also enough to get the point across. So if I increase the opacity, you can see what it's really doing, but I didn't want it that strong, so I went ahead and lowered it. And it gave me some pretty cool information. And so now that I'm at the end of, I feel like the color's good. I'm really liking it. I always go and bring in the edges. It just makes it pop. And all this is doing is utilizing the curvature. And if you really wanted to, you can create some distortion. So let's create a noise, a whirly. I'm going to bring up the frequency, octaves. I'm actually just going to push all the stuff up so it's very fine. And then I'm going to set this guy to distort. Oops. Set this guy to distort. And I'm going to go ahead and hit 9. And you can see what it's doing to the curvature. So it's distorting it pretty heavily. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down. And then now we have it distorting it. So it's now not just a basic curvature, but now we get some extra detail there, which I feel like will help sell it really well. And then last but not least, I'm going to add dirt inside the crevices. And this guy, using a curvature, but inverted. So you can see how it's just getting all up in there, all up in the crevices. And then using a noise to multiply across it to help remove some of the areas and also just make it feel like it's actual dirt, not just solid white across the board. And I lower the opacity, but you can bring it up and you can start seeing like, hey, it's more of like dirt rather than just solid white. So this is an overview on how I utilize ZBrush and the mixer to help push my materials. I hope you found this informative, and thanks for checking it out, guys. All right, see ya.